Thank you, Bill. Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Lee. I'm an alcoholic. And I am just so pleased to be here this weekend with you guys. And it's such a privilege to be invited. And that is doubled to be able to partner with Peter. We've known each other a long time, but we've never done something like this together. Though I do have to say, when Bill was just talking about Peter getting up at 3 and then we're asking him to speak here tonight, and I would say try and stop him. Okay. Peter's sponsor and my friend Bob says we would get on a bicycle and go 500 miles just to get behind a microphone. And there's probably some truth to that, but the other truth is my life is so blessed to be invited to do something like this, and not because I'm confused you need to hear what I have to say, because we could all change seats in here and do it, but I just have an overwhelming need to say it. And what happens is I get to meet people, and my life is so big today because of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I hope that shows, and I hope to be able to share that during the course of the weekend. And we've talked a little bit. We got there's only 2 of us, and we have 3 microphones. That'll tell you something about us as well. But we have given each other permission. We want this to be as informal as possible within the confines of having a schedule. But what we hope is we know that there are multiple sessions that are scheduled, and in some cases there are steps associated with that. What I'm going to tell you is that we're going to start talking, and when we stop on Sunday, we hope we will have touched most of the bases. But we, like most of us, we're not going to be held hostage to what's on the paper, because things are going to happen. Things are going to show up to be talked about, and they're not all going to be linear. The spiritual world is not a linear world. The steps are numbered for a reason as we navigate through them, particularly the first time. But what I find, and the longer I have a relationship with that, is we see multiple steps in every step. We see the repeated themes of Alcoholics Anonymous, this goal ultimately of trying to connect with a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. That's the track we're on. And what I hope to do this weekend is share what my experience looked like and felt like and looks like and feels like. I say sometimes the easiest thing I do in Alcoholics Anonymous is tell you what I think I used to be like. And the hardest thing I do sometimes is tell you what I'm like now. Sometimes it's the hardest thing to even understand and know. But talking about the history is easy, but getting current, and I hope during the course of this weekend to get current with you on those things. And Don P. used to say that when we got together like this, that he felt his role was to help create an environment where the message of Alcoholics Anonymous can flourish. I know, and Peter knows, that during the course of this weekend, the most important things that will happen and the most impactful things that will happen will be in between the meetings. They will be at dinner. I've already had conversations, a wonderful conversation with Reba, who I met today, and thank you so much for that. Conversations with old friends that I hadn't seen in a while. And I hope to spend time with all of you before the weekend is over, between the meetings. So please search me out, even if it's just to correct me about something I said. Because don't do that in front of a crowd. Pull me aside. And I'm fragile. But that's what we hope to do. And part of what I'll be talking about this weekend will be framed, a recurring theme will be relationships. But I don't necessarily mean, because that's what I was in a meeting, now been a couple of 3 years ago, and a guy, this isn't surprising, a guy came in late, right? Nothing surprising about that. He sat down, and right after the person that was sharing, when he came in, was finished, he chose to share. Nothing surprising about that. He didn't know what the topic was, but that doesn't stop us. We will share at length. The topic is immaterial, but he said, I gather from what I've heard, the topic is relationships. And it wasn't. But I sat there thinking, but actually it was. Because actually all of our meetings are about relationship. It begins here as we will talk in a few minutes about the first step, the first thing that you asked me to do when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that you shared with me from your experience, was let's examine your relationship with alcohol. What is that relationship? Then I go forward and I begin to examine my relationship with me. Then I begin to examine that relationship with you. And then I examine that relationship with God. And our book says that each of us in our own language, from his own point of view, talks about how he established a relationship with God. Ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're talking about how do I establish this relationship with this power greater than myself. If we're here under the context of and I know that there are multiple 12-step fellowships represented here, and after we get done after the relationship with alcohol, it said each of us in our own language from our own point of view. I will tell you that, what you will hear much about this weekend is my point of view. And all that means is this is what it looks like from here. It's not the definitive point of view. It's not the only angle of approach. Right now we're in this room. I can see things you can't see from your vantage point, and you can see things I can't see. That doesn't make either of us wrong. It just means we're looking at it from a different angle. So I will share my point of view. And my point of view is that in that examining my relationship with alcohol, that's the piece that makes me alcoholic or non-alcoholic, right? It says that when it says that no matter what characteristics we have in our alcoholism, whether we're the depressive type about which a whole book could be written, whether we are like every other man except the respect in which alcohol affects us, whether I'm the guy that thinks after not drinking for a while I can drink with impunity, whether I'm a psychopath. And there are 3 psychopaths here. I'm not going to point you out, but but it says all of these types of alcoholics. See, we all have these wide and varied characteristics. We sometimes tell ourselves, understandably, that you tell people you're not unique. But what we're really saying is your alcoholism isn't unique. That regardless of my life experience, regardless of what my life looked like or how I come in here or all the external circumstances of my life that sometimes can be quite different one to another, the alcoholism at its core, the spiritual malady of alcoholism, I believe is the same. And it says all these and many others, so there may even be a broader cross-section, have one thing in common. And it's the allergy to alcohol, the phenomenon of craving. And it says that's the single symptom that we all share. So I believe that is exclusive to the alcoholic. But the second half of the first step, the unmanageability, is used in over 200 other 12-step programs. And that is common to the alcoholic, but it's not exclusive to the alcoholic. And I hope to talk about that. Those are very, because once stopping drinking, me putting down alcohol is the preparation for the treatment of my alcoholism. That doesn't treat my alcoholism, it just keeps me sober if I can stay sober a day at a time while I get engaged in the spiritual solution that AA offers. So we're going to be talking about, at least from my perspective and my point of view, how I established a relationship with God. And it wasn't a straight line. And so we don't spend all that much time talking about talking about God. We do in the broad context, but I don't tell you who and what God is. I tell you how I established a relationship with God and what that relationship looks like and feels like and the impact it has on me today. What did I do to, my wife Connie isn't here, but I will be talking about her. In fact, since she's not here, I'll probably talk a lot about her this weekend. But if you came up to me and said, Steve, how did you and Connie meet? And I spent the next 20 minutes telling you about Connie, her characteristics, and I'm telling you all about Connie, the information would be accurate, but you're going, but how did you meet? How did you guys get hooked up? And I think that's what we do here about this relationship with God. How did you meet? How did you make that connection? And what does that look and feel like in your life today? So I hope to get there some. We're going to go in this session probably till about sometime between 7:45 to 8, and then we'll take a 10 or 15 minute break and come finish up. I'm telling you that so you know that there's an end to this, and you give you hope, as Judge Jack used to say. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be doing it with Peter. We've also given each other permission to interrupt each other. We're going to bounce back and forth like a ping pong. I know that Peter will say something that will remind me of something that I never would have thought about on my own. So I look forward to that stimulation, and I hope in our breaks and stuff that you guys will feel free to come either ask a question or say, would you talk about this? We're here to try to be of service to you in whatever way we can. So I'll let Peter talk for a few minutes.
Okay. Peter, recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And listening to Bill introduce the people from all different parts of the country. We have Tennessee, Florida, Ohio, Canada. It's like the heads of the 5 families are here tonight. It's a pretty good thing. It made me feel right at home, by the way. But I want to thank the committee and Bill for having Steve and I here and experientially talk about what has happened to us. In a small amount of time. We go till Sunday, but it's never enough time to really talk about the mechanics and go line by line experientially what this looks like. June 23rd, 1988 has been a loving God separating me from alcohol. Very grateful for this gift of sobriety. I'm very grateful, as I've said many times from these podiums, the longer I'm sober and the older I'm getting, for the things God has removed and continues to remove from me, albeit I leave claw marks in many of it. It's the things I think I need to be okay. The things outside of me that I think I need to be okay. The money, property, and prestige that make me a better man, a stronger man, more well-liked, popular in Alcoholics Anonymous. And like most of my lessons, they were hard learned that in order for me to touch what's outside, I first need to experience what's inside of me first, because that's where the walk comes from. Steve talked about relationships. It's a number of years now. I just had these aha moments on the importance of relationships, to clean up old scrapes, to right the wrongs I've committed, to listen to people with constructive criticism, to be able to create space or detach. My sponsor says create space from the people who are wreaking havoc in my life, who are self-run right and don't want to hear a solution. And sometimes sick people do sick things, unfair things. And sometimes I just need to get away from that. And I'm learning that little by slowly. See, God put a cross on my back. I carry it joyfully, but I don't need to put 2 more on because of self-will run riot or people-pleasing and self-seeking and things like that. I have a home group. It's Alcoholics and God, and my sponsor is Bob is on from St. Paul, Minnesota. This is a new relationship, and it has been incredibly enlightening for me. I come from a line of sponsorship from my very first one. In fact, Steve mentioned Don P. He was the least rigid out of all of them, but my line of sponsorship has been incredibly rigid, very disciplined. And I don't regret any of it because it's what I needed. We alcoholics are undisciplined. It says we let God discipline us to the spiritual life, and I need a teacher to do that. And they would hold me really accountable. I had sponsors when I would call them up, do you have inventory on this? I didn't do it yet, and they'd hang up the phone. Now that doesn't work for me anymore, and I love the mechanics. I love going through the book. I like taking people through the book who are hungry for the information. But what I found out is this. Am I just getting information and lacking transformation? Am I being programmed by the program? Am I getting to experience the freedom that this book talks about? Or am I so wrapped up in myself? You know, going through the steps over and over again can be just immersed in me again and stroking my ego, that I know the information so well and I'll hit you over the head with it, rather than experientially talking about it and even beyond that, some of the freedom that's involved. How am I at home? You have to ask Marion about that. How am I at work? Not from behind the podium. How am I doing when you meet me for a cup of coffee? Does it all look consistent? So what my goal has been to surrender everything to God and hopefully allow, to be open enough to allow him in and to carry the vision of his will into all my activities. And I fell miserably at that. You know, you're looking at a broken vessel here. One day, God might make me an enlightened being, and one day, God might make me a spiritual being. But one thing I'm going to be stuck with till my last breath is human being, which means I'm subject to break down at any moment. I'm the guy who causes a traffic jam, and I'm the only one on the road. I mean, that's how I do it. You know, the narratives in the head, the dialogue in the head. I'm a business owner. I've been a business owner for about 5 years now, and we've had incredible times and very difficult and challenging times. And during the wonderful times, I sometimes get delusions of grandeur, and during the difficult times, I have myself, you know, outside the Holland Tunnel in New York with a squeegee cleaning windows, or living in a tent somewhere in a cardboard box. And that's just the narrative the head gives me all the time, and I listen to it. And when we talk about step one in unmanageability, it's not just when I was drinking or first got in here. It's current unmanageability. How much power does these thoughts have? A lot. One of the things I always have to take a look at is my thought life created my current reality. Yeah, it does. And for the longest time, I thought I had thoughts. I have thoughts. These are my thoughts. Call up Steve, call up Bob, call up Mary and say, I got these thoughts and I don't know what to do with them. I'm in my head. Well, if I had thoughts and they were my thoughts, I can get rid of them. See, if I went to the store and bought a shirt and I got it home and I didn't like it, I can exchange it. I can give it to someone. I can throw it out. It's my shirt, do anything I want. I can wash my car with it. How come I can't do that with my thoughts? Just get rid of them. You know, start your day over anytime you want. I wish I could, but I can't. Because I don't have the thoughts. They have me. And they lock in a firm grip on me and they're not letting go. And I believe them to be true. That's why they have so much power. And most of my thinking is before and later on, before and later on, before and later, all day long. That's why when you ask a guy like me, an alcoholic, at 10 o'clock in the morning, how you doing? I'm always tired. Because I'm wrestling with 45 people all at the same time. You know, anyone drive here alone tonight? Anyone in their car drive here alone? Yeah, you really didn't if you think about it. Because on the ride over here, you had about 15 people in the back seat saying, how come they didn't ask me to speak? I'm spiritual. You know, and I'm wrestling with all these voices. Some voices have long gone. They passed on, and I'm still fighting with them. And I think about that stuff when we talk about step one in current unmanageability. June 23rd, 1988, my separation from alcohol wasn't a day that I expected to happen. And I've heard enough stories. A lot of us don't expect the day of sobriety to show up. It's suddenly you get surrendered. How'd this happen? The night before, I'm blind drunk, I can't get out, and the next day, suddenly I find myself in treatment or on a detox or in an AA meeting with the firm desire. I can't go back there. How's that happen? It doesn't come from me. In June of 88, June 23rd, 1988, I'm living in an abandoned building in a lower Manhattan Alphabet City with 6 treatment centers under my belt. I'm literally a homeless bum. I hadn't bathed in God knows how long, nor did I change my clothes. I was running around with, I had these construction boots, and the right boot was missing the front. And I had these blood-stained soiled pants on, and it was June. It's hot in New York. And I remember wearing a turtleneck and a black zip-up jacket. I'm cold and sweating at the same time. I didn't know I was going through withdrawal, but that's what I was doing. I didn't have I'll lay off the sauce and make a few meetings and make 90 days and go back again. I was just drunk. I had to get drunk. From my first treatment center to the last one, if I wasn't locked up or in treatment, I was either drunk, high, or in the pursuit of getting that. And I go to any lengths to do that. And so I really hit the skids in 1988. My family pretty much gave up on me. Last thing my dad told me when he threw me out of his car, which I even asked him, by the way, can you loan me $20 as he's throwing me out of the car, was if you want help, I'll help you, but until then, stay away from the family. And I went back on the streets, and over and over again, I'm in the grip of this thing called alcoholism, which will pay any price tomorrow to seek comfort right now. And that will happen to me in Alcoholics Anonymous when this thing goes underground and starts to resurface in other areas, yeah? the sex sprees and the food sprees and the gambling sprees and whatever spree I'm on because I'm so uncomfortable right here. My alcoholism gets a life by taking mine. It devours me. And you see it, but I can't. God will call me home one day, and I hope to die with alcoholism, but not from alcoholism, because I can die from this thing without ever putting a drink in me. Because alcoholism's always working on me, yeah? So step one, when we open up the big book, the steps are kind of broke. 6 and 7 is a paragraph each. Into Action has a bunch of steps. How it works, 3 and 4. They're kind of like paragraphs. Step 10 is like a page and a half. A powerful step like that. Yet when we look at the book and we examine it, I have 43 pages that talk about step 1 alone, plus doctor's opinion. To smash home to a guy like me that if I don't get this, why proceed any further? And it wasn't even a conclusion of the mind for me. It was something deep down in the soul. And I would look at my experience drinking and taking non-conference approved dry goods and trying to run the show myself, and step 1 fit. But until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't realize how much it fit and how deep it went. Okay, I know if I drink, I can't stop. I got it. My life's unmanageable. I just took a look at tip of the iceberg. In the book, it says the more hopeless we feel, the better. And when I got my first sponsor, he made me feel really much more hopeless. Like I need help tying my own shoelaces. And it was good because more options were removed. I'm getting moved. I'll turn it over to Steve just to talk about the current unmanageability. I'm sober 34 years, thank you God. Does step 1 even apply anymore? I haven't had a drink. I haven't thought about drinking or taking other substances in a very long time. What does step 1 have to do with me now? Everything. Steve talked about personal relations, wanted to be devilments. Am I having trouble in personal relationships? And it's not the occasional spat we might have with our spouse, or maybe a little argument with the coworker. We're not seeing eye to eye with the boss, and you kind of fix it up and you move on. What's about trouble in personal relationships, inwardly and outwardly? For me, it's always inwardly. Because inwardly, I'd say, you're absolutely wrong. What are you talking about? Outside, I say, okay, sure, no problem. Right? And it's grinding on me all day long, that undercurrent of dis-ease and comfort, because no one's doing it right. If they'd only see it my way, and I'll be honest with you, I just talked about this last night. When COVID hit, I thought I was the only guy in AA who couldn't get to a meeting. I was furious, and I was blaming a political side for making this happen. They are wrong, and I am right. I couldn't get to a meeting. I couldn't even get a haircut. This was really important stuff. I remember sitting in my apartment going, the world just ended and it's their fault. So I got trouble in personal relationships, but I'm justifying the whole thing. And my sponsor says, when did you become God? When do you get on the white horse, draw the sword, and go fix the world? You can't even get out of your own way. And it was humbling to hear that, but he was right. I'm full of fear, prey to misery and depression, can't make a living, a feeling of uselessness. This is all the stuff that's going on while I'm showing up to a meeting telling you how wonderful I am. I'm Moses during the AA meeting. I go home, I look like Rambo. It doesn't jive, you know. What am I going to do about stuff like that, the current unmanageability? My mind will override everything except God. So my prayer life is lacking. I'm not really putting pen to paper. I really don't have a meditation life. It's really an inconvenience when people call me and want help. I really don't want to hear it. I don't even want to go to a meeting anymore. And the whole thing is starting to just get away from me. And I don't have a 10-step problem, or 11-step problem, or defective character problem, and 6. I got a first-step problem all over again, because I'm running my life right into the ground. It should look consistent, and I'm happy to report to you the truth. It doesn't always look consistent, because outwardly I could present well, and sometimes inwardly I'm not so good. And so it's back to God again. For me, step 1 tells me this. It's not interested. My alcoholism is not interested in how long I'm sober. It is not impressed. It is not impressed that I get to do this often. It is not impressed. It's not impressed that I have a really cool home group and I have a sponsor. It's not impressed. What it's trying to do is get me drunk or dead. Step one for a guy like me tells me you are drinking. The time and place is going to come with all your information that you will pick up a double vodka and blow it all up. Period, non-negotiable. I suffer from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer, and the way out of this madness is looking at step two. Because I could be suffering from active alcoholism when I'm drinking, and I could be suffering from alcoholism when I'm sober. And sometimes that noise is going to get so loud, that tension is going to get so loud, I need relief somewhere. And the sex spree and the gambling spree and the food spree is just not, it's not working. I know something that will, and that old default button has dust and spider webs on it, but it still works. And that is drink and get some breathing room. And then I buy back the whole show because my mind always told me, just going to have one, just to take the edge off, but once I have one, the craving's on, and now I need a second drink. And the second drink goes down, and now it's demanding a third drink because the craving's on. I get stuck in more. The craving for me is the word more. I need more. More, I'm a glutton, need more of everything. I get stuck right in more, and I can't get out. And again, I know it's going to be bad, but I have to do what I need to do right now. I'll pay any price tomorrow to seek comfort right now. How do I free myself of this? There's a line on page 43, and I got to just refer to it. If you give me a second here. It says this, that as an alcoholic, I'm 100% hopeless apart from divine help. I mean, that's a clear-cut warning. Without God, I drink and die. And for me, this whole thing that I get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous, from my point of view, is about taking a guy like me or the sponsee and putting his hand in mine and bringing him to God. This whole thing is a spiritual walk for me. It's a soulful walk, and I get to get some soul food while I'm in here. So I'm traveling a lot lighter. I'm not consumed with me. And I've been consumed with me. I'm sober a few years now. I can't tell you every day has been joyous, happy, and free. I'm on top of the world. It's been sometimes a grind and frustrating, and sometimes just depressed and frightened. There's been plenty of times on this journey where life was hurting again. And I'm like a kid in a mall who can't find mama, and I'm afraid to yell out, somebody help me. Financial insecurity, health scares, losing a ton of friends. I hope I'm a good husband to my wife now. Am I really doing a good job? Am I a provider? How am I doing? And sometimes I need to go to God on bended knees and say, just please help. I don't know if I'm doing okay. That sounds admirable, but my head gets a hold of it and creates a narrative, and I want to put my head in the sand at that point. So step one just has lots of tentacles for me. Yeah, we're going to talk about the drink and my lack of power, choice, and control over that. But what about when I'm sober and I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous a number of years? Yeah? And Steve will vouch for me. What we get to do can be deadly if we're not close to the ground. I know some cats who love this. This is all they want to do. You can't have a cup of coffee with them. It's really important that I stay connected, and Steve said it best. There's a bunch of people in this room who can do this weekend. We just got selected to share our experience, strength, and hope. So I'm going to turn over to my buddy, Steve. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. My sobriety date, and the last time that I had a drink or a drug was June the 29th of 1989. And I have chosen June the 30th as my sobriety date. I went to my sponsor at about 6 months sober, and I said, I'm confused about this sobriety date. I said, is it the last day I had a drink or the first day I didn't have one? And he said, Steve, I'm just impressed at the quality of questions keeping you up at night. And he said, I don't care. I don't care. He said, pick one. He said, because I'm much more concerned with you not taking the next drink than when you had the last one. But June the 29th, I did not anticipate going this long between drinks. I was not stopping drinking on June the 29th. But I was scheduled into a treatment facility on July the 1st of 1989. And I wasn't going because I wanted to stop drinking. I wasn't going Certainly, I wasn't looking for a design for a living that works in tough going, you know. I wasn't looking for a kit of spiritual tools. None of that. I was simply fulfilling my obligation to the legal system of Williamson County, Tennessee, for the conviction of my 6th DUI a year before. And as a result, they gave me some jail time, and they were going to cut some of that jail time off if I would go to what they referred to as residential drug and alcohol rehabilitation. Now, I had never heard all those words strung together at one time, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be, but it sounded marginally better than jail. And so I'm going to go, right, on July the 1st. And my buddy Ricky came by. Connie and I went out. It wasn't even that June the 29th, wasn't even a wild evening. We went out to dinner with 3 other couples as just sort of a soiree before I went away. Spent the next day, June the 30th, with our daughter Abby, who was 5 years old at the time. I always say, now you can already tell that you know, I'm the poster boy for middle class alcoholism. I'm not a tough guy. I don't have the skill sets for the mean streets of New York, you know. And I'm just a kid from Smyrna, Tennessee. And but we took our daughter to Chuck E. Cheese on June the 30th of 1989, and I just implore you, if you're not sober yet, don't spend your first day sober at Chuck E. Cheese. It was a hellish day at Chuck E. Cheese. Because some of you have been, it's loud in there. And they are short and coming at you from every angle. And just as I'm gathering my emotional balance, I saw a 6-foot mouse. And I said to Connie, baby, do you see the mouse? And Saturday morning, July the 1st, my friend Ricky came by to drive me off to treatment. And Connie walked out with me, and her last words to me, a lot of folks tear up at this because a lot of you didn't get the kind of support that I got. And Connie's last words to me were, no matter what, baby, don't stop drinking. I don't know what they're doing over there, but just go do your time and come back home. And, you know, that was, lest I forget to tell you, Connie's sobriety date is 10 days after mine. And we had been married almost 7 years at the time. We had this 5-year-old daughter. We had met just over 7 years before. She had just moved back to Nashville from Lake Tahoe, where she'd been dealing baccarat. She was freshly divorced. So she had a divorce pickup truck and a divorce pocket full of money and a divorce 8-ball of cocaine. And that's just a package I fell for. You can't let, you know, that I couldn't walk past that. And we start running and gunning together. A few months later, we went on a trip to Mexico. We drank something out of a coconut. We got on a boat. They went out to what they swear were international waters, and an Austrian merchant marine read in Spanish what he swears was a wedding ceremony. Yeah. Now, we don't speak Spanish, so we don't know what we agreed to. But that'll be 40 years ago on December 31st of this year. Now, Connie, she didn't come to AA till 4 years after that last drink. And I'll just, as an aside, say that she says she would have gotten to AA a lot sooner if I had not been so helpful to her. So be careful how you try to push this on somebody. But my friend Ricky drives me over there, and the first thing they did, and this is my relationship with alcohol, they began to examine it in this treatment facility, and they do it differently than we do it in AA. They didn't tell me anything about their drinking. They asked me questions about my drinking. And I think that's what they're supposed to do in that environment, to help me find it. But that's what they did, and they did it with I know now it's called an assessment, but it felt like a test. And among other things, there was a psychosocial workup, there was all the clinical aspects, but there was also 30 questions that all began with the phrase, have you ever? There is no wiggle room in have you ever. Because they said even once, and even with a really good reason. Have you ever drank in the morning? Have you ever drank alone? Have you ever had a DUI? Have you ever had a blackout? Have you ever had trouble at work because of drinking? Have you ever had trouble at home because of drinking? 30 have you ever questions that most of you know just have check yes or check no to what I contend are clearly essay questions. These are questions that beg for an explanation. And you know, we laugh a little bit here, but I will tell you that morning I couldn't make myself check the box because they're going to draw conclusions about me. And I'm honestly thinking, how can you do this without the backstory? How can you do it without context? How can you do it without me explaining this to you? And by the way, I got questions about the questions. What do you mean mourning? And see, and this part of my problem is I think I know what they're asking. And so I want more clarification, and because see, I think they're asking me if I'm that guy that's got a half pint on the nightstand that has, come to at 4 a.m. with the sweats and the shakes and has to fight a couple of drinks down just to calm down, just to be able to get into the bathroom and maybe start my day. And I'd certainly done that a few times, but not so often I'm checking it on this test. But I asked them, what if I'm out at a very nice establishment at 2 a.m. at last call? Is that morning drinking? And if I don't explain the difference to you, you'll think I'm pour half pint on the nightstand alcoholic rather than cool out at the club alcoholic. And I said, have you ever drank alone? And I went, yes, but they left, We started together. Did you ever just go, whoa, where'd everybody go? Because, see, I think they're asking me if I'm that guy that's got to come home that's going to close the door and pull the shades, and it used to be unplug the phone, but now put it on silent or vibrate, and drink in isolation, hiding from the world and hiding from the responsibilities that I could not meet day after day after day. And, man, I absolutely did that, but I'm not copping to it on here. If you ever had a blackout, I'm a blackout drinker. I don't think that makes you alcoholic necessarily. I don't know that not having a blackout, relieves you of the diagnosis. I just know I'm a blackout drinker. And as the comedian Dave Attell calls it, he calls it time travel. And that's what it felt. You never go, whoa, how did I get here in the future and what has been going on? And if you're like me, you don't ask people. You try to read their faces the next day, right? It's sort of like a forensic exercise of trying to work back and figure out what happened without having to reveal that you don't know. Now that resulted in some other escapades. Isn't that a kind word that our book uses? Our escapades. It's like ice-capades. But see, that's the relationship I got with alcohol, and I don't know how to, until I get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and begin to see in the book the descriptions and hear you guys talk about it, that it resonated with me in a different way, that all of a sudden I knew what it meant. I didn't have language to talk about being powerless. I didn't know anything about being powerless. Back into the employer, it says when dealing with an alcoholic, there may be a natural annoyance that someone could be so weak, stupid, and irresponsible. And that's from the up until then uninformed perspective of the employer who can't figure this out. And alcoholism to the untrained eye looks weak, stupid, and irresponsible. It looks like if you loved me more, you wouldn't do that. It looks like if you cared about your daughter, you wouldn't do that. It looks like if you wanted to stay out of jail, you wouldn't do that. It looks like there would be circumstances sufficient for me to assess them and go, you know what, I probably should stop. And I will tell you 2 cases of when I tried to stop drinking. But for a long time, I wasn't trying to stop drinking. I was trying to do better. I was trying to not let that happen again. And that makes sense to me. You could almost see me strain trying to do better, trying to not drink too much. I want to keep drinking. I just don't want to drink too much. I got 6 DUIs, right? I never got one of them on purpose. I never took my first drink in the evening and thought, you know what, if I do everything just right, by around midnight, 1 o'clock, I will have cheated on my wife, I will have wrecked my car, I will have pissed my pants, I'll be handcuffed in the back of a police car. Let's get this party started. That was never what I was trying to do. I had a whole different plan, and I didn't understand why I couldn't execute the plan. I didn't understand why I couldn't get what our book calls back in A Vision for You, what most normal folks get from a few drinks, right? For most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, joyous intimacy with friends, colorful imagination, release from care, boredom, and worry, and a feeling that life is good. I got a little thirsty just saying that. Who wouldn't want a glass of that? See, but it goes on to describe me when it says, but not so for those of us in the latter days of our drinking, maybe momentarily. Maybe momentarily. So maybe drink 3, maybe drink 5, maybe at 9 o'clock, all of these things are happening for me. But then comes oblivion and awakening to face the hideous 4 horsemen of terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. You know, I just come to and I look around and go, where did you 4 come from, man? How did this happen again? That despair, being in that drunk tank, right? After the wreck, after the arrest, after the infidelity, and going, oh man, how did this happen again? And then I would try with all my might not to do that again. Not to not get drunk. I kept trying to not do the stuff I did when I got drunk. And I'll tell you, my point of view is that once I get drunk, it's not alcoholic behavior, it's drunken behavior. How I drink is alcoholic, but my behavior when I'm drunk is drunk. If you pour a 5th of whiskey in me and a 5th of whiskey in a non-alcoholic, we're both going to be drunk and we're going to do drunk stuff. And it might look different on us. Alcohol looks different on different people. The alcoholism at its core is the same, but how it impacts us may be different. Some of us drink and dance, and some of us drink and fight, Some of us drink and sing karaoke that really never should. And, some of us drink and break the trust of the people we love the most, right? Some of us drink and don't show up for work, don't show up for I'm sitting in a meeting just 3 or 4 weeks ago, first step meeting where people began talking about their drunken escapades. And there was a woman there, and she said she'd only been sober for about 3 weeks. And she said, I didn't have a very low bottom. And then she talked about missing her daughter's recital. She talked about being drunk at her school, at the at the parent-teacher deal. And I'm thinking, oh, how much could that hurt? You don't think that's a low bottom? It's not exciting, it's not colorful, it's pitiful. It's despairing. Oh, sweetheart, you don't have to apologize for what your alcoholism looked like on you to be here. That broke my heart to hear. Sitting in a meeting a number of years ago now, and a woman's in there, and she had come back in, and she was so down on herself, and she said, I love alcohol more than I love my kids. And she was just crestfallen. And I talked to her after the meeting. I said, I don't believe that. I said, but I believe alcoholism is stronger than the love for your kids. That's that lack of power. And that's what's so befuddling when I'm trying to come up on this alcoholism and figure out if I've got it, because I don't understand those things. I just feel weak, stupid, and irresponsible. I just feel like I can't believe I did that again. And I get here and you guys give me language to talk about my alcoholism. And that doctor's opinion, and in there, when they, responding to the doctor, said his theory that we have an allergy interests us. It explains that for which I could not otherwise account. Man, I can't tell you when the idea that my alcoholism included an allergy to alcohol, a physical reaction that's different than the non-alcoholic, that was just, revolutionary to me. Whoa, and it explained that for which I could not otherwise account. It doesn't let me off the hook. It doesn't make me not responsible for what I did, but it explains. It's not an excuse, it's an explanation for what happened. But then I couldn't figure out, what about when I'm not drinking? It was unbelievable to me that you guys were forwarding the idea that I had alcoholism even when I wasn't drinking. That made no sense to me. I didn't understand anything about both the mental obsession. That felt weak, stupid, and irresponsible. And then I get here and I read on page 24 in our book when it says, in 1980, I left a bar in Atlanta, Georgia. I went east into westbound lane. I hit a car head on, 2 other cars hit us. It totaled all 4 cars. Some people ended up in the hospital. I ended up in the Cobb County Jail. I came to the next morning, I'd urinated on myself and I'd vomited on myself, or I hope I did, because somebody did. And But that's the state I found myself in, and I will tell you, that's when I quit drinking. That morning, as full-throated as I had ever been to myself, I said, I'm done. I had never been more afraid of the consequences that awaited me personally and professionally and legally. I had never been more humiliated at the state I found myself in my own urine and vomit. I'd never been more ashamed of the harm I'd caused other people, and I did not yet know the extent of the injuries. And I'd never been more certain that I'm done. I will never drink again. And 10 days later, I'm driving down the road, smoking a joint, drinking a bottle of wine, thinking I nearly overreacted to that. And I don't understand it. I said, oh, man, I'll do better. I'll try harder. I won't do that again. I don't understand any of that. I get to AA, and I see on page 24 in our book that it says there'll come a time that the alcoholic, a guy like me, won't be able to bring to consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. I'll be without defense. I hit that spot that Peter referenced on page 43 when it's just about to move us over to we agnostics, right? After all this talk, then it says once more. You know, if the book says once more, it's saying, I've been telling you and telling you and telling you. But one more time, dumbass, before we move on. One more time. At certain times, the alcoholic will have no effective mental defense, nor any human power. That defense must come from a higher power. That's where you're sending me. That's the hopeless state you leave me in at step one. That is, and thank God they didn't end with the diagnosis of the problem. Because a problem without a solution, how brutal is that for you to come tell me that I got a problem that you have no idea what for me to do about it. So that turn the next page begins to move me on, and it gives me what I was finally able to grab hold of and raise my hand and concede to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. And it started with that relationship to alcohol. And on page 44, that simple description that says if when you honestly want to, you find you can't stop entirely, or if when drinking you have little control of the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. They even gave me a little wiggle room, right? You're probably alcoholic. And I'm going, I am. When I got where I could honestly lay my life experience over both of those things, they are both true of me. I'm unpredictable when I drink. I don't get, unbelievably drunk every time I drink, which is part of the mystery. Sometimes it went well. And sometimes it went way off in the weeds, and I don't know when. I'm playing Russian roulette, and I don't know I've got a progressive illness that has me putting extra bullets in the chamber as I go along. So I don't understand that part of it, but now I can look back and finally could honestly see that fit in my life. But then when you honestly want to, can't stay stopped. I could look in 1980 and see I could not stop. I meant it. And there was another time right after I'd been to court that I'll talk about later that I quit and could not stop. So when I finally go, I meant that, yeah, I'm probably alcoholic. You have explained my problem. That's what step one describes alcoholism for me to decide whether I have it or not. And you share with me about your alcoholism so I can decide whether I've got that or not. It says in the book, it says that if you're an alcoholic that wants to get over it, those are two separate, are you alcoholic? Yeah, do you want to get over it? No, I'm not sure. Well, if you do, it says we will tell you, so that's exactly what this book is about. We will tell you what we have done. I think that's what Peter and I hope to do this weekend. It's what many of us will do in the breaks. The book is the information. But what I'm going to share is my experience with the information. And my experience with the information might look and sound a little different than Peter's experience. That doesn't make it wrong. The information doesn't change, my relationship to the information changes. The technique, like I said, we're not going to be technicians, but I was told to do certain things a certain way. And somebody else is over here doing it a little different way. And neither were trying to be less true to the directions in the book. But the important thing is that we will tell you what we have done. To me, that is a critical piece. I have done my most damage in Alcoholics Anonymous and other areas of my life when I show up properly armed with the facts about you, even if I'm right about the facts. But when you're telling me about you, I can listen. I'm not planning my rebuttal. I can just listen. And you say, you interested? If you're interested, I'll tell you more. We can spend some time together. If you're not interested, no harm, no foul. We're not angry. We're not out recruiting people. We don't have a membership drive in AA. That's the attraction. Let me tell you about me, and this is what I look like. You want to talk some more. And it's really that simple. And one of the things that made it easy for me to stay in AA is how easy you made it for me to leave. If you close and lock that door, all I can think about is getting out that damn door. But if you say, Steve, you're free to leave anytime you want, that also means I'm free to stay a little longer. And that's what you did for me here in AA. I'll let Peter take us to the top of the hour.
Okay. Peter, alcoholic. My experience has shown me in step one that this word unmanageability. In 1988, it was pretty obvious my life was unmanageable. I mean, if you're a bum on the street, you're unemployed, no woman would even fly over you, let alone date me. I don't bathe. I basically boost a pack of Twinkies from the local store. That's my dinner, because any money I hustle up goes to alcohol. And I'm dying of alcoholism. 1988, I weigh 130 pounds. I'm 200 right now, about 197, like that. I have hepatitis C and I'm urinating blood and I'm running through the streets. My life looks unmanageable. It is unmanageable. Then I come into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I start to get weeks and months together, and you know what happens? I start to eat right, I'm bathing regularly, and I'm shaving, and I'm washing my hair, and I'm putting on clean clothes, I'm washing my own clothes. I get a little sober job, I get a couple of dollars in my pocket, so when they take me to the diner, I can buy my own coffee. And I'm going to meetings, and I'm learning the lingo, and I'm starting to repeat that. And the old timers, bless their hearts, would say, hey, you look good, you sound good, you look good, you sound good. That's great to hear. I'm glad they did it. It was a Band-Aid on an open wound. But my ego hooks into that, yeah? My ego hooks into that and say, all I need to do is look good and sound good, look good and sound good, look good and sound good. My life is now manageable. I don't have an unmanageability problem. And what happens is my ego just gets attached to that and forgets about the first half of the first step that says, no matter what I have, I'm alcoholic and I will drink again. For me, the essence of unmanageability, my experience has abundantly confirmed to me that unmanageability means I don't know what the day is going to look like when the drink calls and I go, or the imperious urge to do something else calls and I can't stop it, and everything's at risk on the table. My career, my relationship, my money, my children, everything. And my mind just pushes it aside in favor of the foolish idea that I can do it just one time. Now, if my sponsee did that, I says, you can't do that, but I give myself carte blanche to do it, because I'm being led by the mind again. It's unbelievable how quickly unmanageable my life can get if I'm seeing through the mind, speaking through the mind, hearing through the mind, behaving through the mind, rather than the soul, because I'm always wrong or impacting someone in a negative way. And as long as I'm operating out of the soul, it's perfect. It knows where to go, what to say, and what to do. You know how we know we're operating out of the soul? You know, sometimes you're sitting in a meeting and you hear something that sounds pretty good and you jot it down, so I got to use that at home group. I'll make it mine. And then sometimes someone says something and you don't write anything down, you just go, yes, exactly right. You know, we do that AA nod thing. Because what's happening is the soul is acknowledging what it always knew. And I'm hearing it for the first time. There's no need to write because I won't forget it, because the soul, it's speaking to the soul. What this book does is talk right to the soul. It goes right past the mind. The mind is a four-letter word. It's a predator. It's a troublemaker. It's where all the misery is manufactured. If I can get away from my mind, I'd be doing good. When some people say, I'm really angry with that store owner, I'm going to go down and give a piece of my mind, I always tell them, give the whole thing, you'll be better off. When the third step talks about we enjoy peace of mind, it's not because I'm in charge of my mind, but there's a shift that's happening. I start to operate out of my soul. And my point of view on everything has changed. In fact, so much so, I start to look in at my mess rather than out at you from my mess. I start to look in rather than from out. On page 20 and 21, they talk about the moderate drinker. This person has power, choice, control. They're not alcoholic. Sometimes they show up in AA. Sometimes they show up in treatment. You know, the wife said, hey, you've got to do something about your drinking. And he goes to treatment, she goes to treatment, they never drink again, don't even go to AA. We have a hard drinker. They get in trouble, wind up in detox. Some of them show up in AA, bless their hearts. Then we have the real alcoholic. And that's no matter what, they can't stop. While they're drinking, I used to do this, while I'm drinking, I never picked up the first drink drunk. I get out of treatment, I'm stone cold sober, I have no post-acute withdrawal syndrome, my body is fine, and I'm going for the drink, and I know it's going to give me relief because I can't take sober. I don't like sober. I wound up too tight, but as I'm drinking, it's not a good idea, it's a bad idea, but I got to go. Because I need okayness, I need to experience relief. And the mind never tells me, you know what's going to happen when you drink? You're going to have a second drink, you're going to wind up locked up, she's going to throw you out, your dad's going to throw you out, you're going to lodge her. Never tells me that. It just tells me it's euphoric recall, how wonderful this is going to be. I won't get caught. I had an uncle, he's passed on, and he loved to drink. And knowing what I know now, he was a hard drinker. He loved to drink with the men in the family, and he was a cigar smoker and a cigar chewer. He always had a cigar, smoking or chewing, and he loved whiskey. I remember as a kid, my dad would take me and we're going to go see Uncle, his name was Sonny. We're going to go see Uncle Sonny. And it wasn't the Godfather, I promise you. And we'd go to his office, and as soon as my dad walked in, he'd take out a bottle of whiskey, and my dad had to have a drink with him. And that's what he did, loved to drink. And then one day he quit drinking and cigars because the doctor said you got to quit drinking, you got to stop smoking cigars. And he talked about how much he missed it. And when I start smoking and chewing cigars, I would love to have one, but the doctor said I can't. And he'd go to a wedding, he said, I'd love to have a drink, and he'd have a club soda because the doctor said he can't. He wasn't alcoholic, he just stopped. I go to a different doctor, to the doctor says, you can do both, go, you know. And that's the real alcoholic, where I have no power, choice, control in my mind before I even pick up a drink. I'm already screwed. I say often, a lot of us say, you know, Joe or Mary relapsed. What we really mean is they're drunk. Because while they were sitting with us, they're relapsing. While they're home in our occupation's fair, they're in drunk mode. They just haven't lit the fuse yet. I'm that guy. That my mind will lie to me every time. And then I got to a point at the end, I knew what I was. I know I'm alcoholic. I know I can't get out. There was a time where I didn't even want to get out. I loved the lifestyle, the craziness of it. Then I got to a point where it's killing me. I can't get out. I want to get out. I don't know how to get out. Because if I stay away from a drink more than a few hours, it starts to react in an adverse way. It's starting to get really sick. So I need to get a drink just to stop this, to figure out how I'm going to not take the next drink. But once I have it, I need another one. Get out of treatment. I'm done. Pick up a drink, stone cold sober. Because my mind, this predator, this four-letter word, owned me. And here's unmanageability. My mind is always seeking comfort. You know, I need to have ease and comfort, even in sobriety. Don't make me uncomfortable. I'll get a new sponsor. I'll join a new group. I have 40 home groups in 1 year and 200 sponsors. So I'm trying to find someone that makes me comfortable. For me, comfort comes from the mind. It's a four-letter word. I know it isn't, but my mind, for me, comfort is a four-letter word. It's all coming out of the mind. It's things I think I need to be comfortable. So I'm back in running the show and in self-reliance and controlling everything, you and me. You know how that works out for me? I write a lot of resentment inventory, a lot of fear inventory, and then I pick up a double vodka because I need relief from all of that. And the world just gets really lonely. In 1988, I mean, the only thing I knew was panhandling and going to the liquor store, doing some illegal things and going to the liquor store. Panhandling, going to the liquor store. If I made enough money, go to Valium Park and cop some Valium and back to the hallway again. And that was my contact with people. None. How I combat this is having a relationship, not just talking about God. That's easy. Quoting the big book, just study it. Quoting scripture, just study it. There's not much effort in that, but it's living that life. Doing things that I don't really want to do, but God's commanding me to do. That's where rubber hits the road. How free do I want to be? If I'm sitting here this weekend and I have a little bit of freedom, don't I want more? Don't I want to, if I'm experiencing God, don't I want to maybe experience even more God, abundance of God? And am I okay with if God says, this is all I'm giving you? Can I live with that? And if I'm sitting here in a meeting, not only here, but maybe in a meeting, because this has happened to me, sitting in a meeting, I'm wrapped up all tighter than a Major League Baseball. That's not freedom. I'm in bondage of a lot of things in the head. Do I want to get past that? Do I want to get past here? Because I can quickly volunteer to sit in my stuff. Because I'd rather dance with this than dance with the unknown. And all I keep doing is living my story and creating a new chapter rather than living the life God is willing to give me. My experience shows here, no matter how far down the scale I've gone, I haven't sunk so low that God's not going to come rescue me. My point out of all of this, is having power. Top of page 45 says, lack of power was my dilemma. So if I get power, I don't have a dilemma. Well, where am I supposed to find this power? If you were like me, I'm going to look for power in her, in money, in a nice career, fancy car. I'm going to look for power. It's mine. I have control. How often is sex about control and power and affirmation rather than an act of love? And what I do is, and maybe you can identify with this, I did it out there in my early days in here. I wrapped myself up in these bandages, these imaginary bandages: money, relationship, nice job, jewelry maybe, nice clothes, big chairman of the meeting, speaker getter, a powerful position. You know, speaker's good. Look at me, I picked him. Speaker tanks, I leave early. But I wrap myself up in all this stuff, hoping, inwardly hoping that you recognize me, that I'm actually here and I count. And maybe you can give me an affirmation that I'm doing a good job. And maybe inwardly I can convince myself that I got all this stuff now, that I really matter, I count, and I'm not so bad. And that works for a little while. And then the day comes when the truth shows up, where all of that, wrapping myself up in all of this stuff, I'm still empty. Because I'm trying to fill that hole in the soul with stuff, rather than looking at it as a void for God to fill. And I'm on this journey trying to lock into something outside of me. And I become so restless and discontented because of it. Because I'm not locked into God. I'm not having a relationship with God. I'm having a relationship with me and the 7 deadly sins. I'm in a relationship with me and my ego. I'm having relationships I shouldn't be in. Because life hurts. It's uncomfortable. It's problematic. We live in a world of impermanence. I mean, look what we're going through now. Not only the planet, this whole nation is inside out. How do I navigate through it? It hurts. Right is wrong and wrong is right. I don't know what to do. It hurts all the time. How many times you wake up and someone just drops a grenade on you? Someone dies. The boss says, we don't need you. And it just goes on and on and on. I need some muscles to navigate through that because I can't. And yet I'm trying to navigate through it on my own power. It's a form of insanity. Again, I'm running the show. And I start to do what we call lovingly in AA old behavior, but if I'm doing it now, it's not old behavior, it's very current behavior. I have not awakened yet. I have information. I know where the coffee pot is. I know where the taper is. I know some of the people in the room, and I front really well. You think I'm around for 45 years. But if you sat down and had coffee with me, you're going to say, do you have one day back? Because that's how I'm operating. I'm operating out of the head rather than the soul. For me, all unmanageability. And not that when we enter the world of the Spirit, we're beyond all of that. Can never transcend my alcoholism, but a lot of life circumstances just fall by the wayside. And I'll just read this, which is really important to me, especially where I am right now with career and stuff. The uncertainty that we all face from time to time, yeah? And my mind wants to fix the uncertainty. And this is what the author writes. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following you, following your will, does not mean I am doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have the desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road. Though I may not know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always. Though I may seem lost and in the shadow of death, I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. I got to lean on that. Because some of us, we can be very popular in our workplace. I can be very popular in AA. I could be the brightest light in my family. And sometimes I just feel lost and alone. And I don't know where to go. And no matter who I talk to, it's not erasing that. I'm stuck with this thing. I need to lean all the way in. I need to lean all the way into God and surrender it. And eventually the answer will get revealed if I'm listening. And what Mary and I are learning right now is sometimes the answer is not what I was expecting. It's like, what? How far into the forest am I willing to go? You know, I can walk up to the forest and say, the trees are really beautiful, walk a little bit in, say, wow, they're at a different angle from here. I'm only about 10 feet in. God's saying, no, I need you to go all the way in. Leave your cell phone out here. I'll get you out. But you need to go all the way in. Am I really willing to be transformed? Or just have some of the leaves cut off? Am I really signing up for a huge, spectacular upheaval? Our book talks about this personality change sufficient to bring about recovery. Personality change, not just work on a couple of defects. How free do I want to be? There's been times when I'm going all in, and sometimes I hit the brakes and tell the sponsor and God, you're nuts. I'm not going that far in. I have to. I can't imagine with some of the weight that life offers, how it would be if I was in charge all the time. I probably have to check into another treatment center again. So where I stand tonight on a Friday night with this current unmanageability, what it looks like. And I'll break with this. If anyone's sitting here this week and never opened up the book and we're talking about it, if you're not praying or writing inventory and meditating and we're talking about it, or life has just got you and you're in a really tight knot, it's really okay. This is not a classroom. It's really okay. I don't want to make this big bookers against non-big bookers. I know Steve feels the same way. Let's just talk. Let's have my sponsor, let's have a conversation with each other. And maybe we can put a little spotlight on the dark spots in your life and vice versa, so we all can go home a little bit lighter. Okay? We'll take a break. Thank you.
Let's come back at 10 after, if that's okay, and we'll